given current circumstances, nothing should stand in the way of fully reopening our public schools this fall and keeping them open.
That was the president of one of the largest teachers' unions in the country, Randi Weingarten, calling for public schools to fully reopen in the fall, a move that was a major about-face for the union. It came on the same day that the CDC had its about-face over mask guidance. Was that just a coincidence? Joining me now is Darla Romfo, president of Children's Scholarship Fund, which has provided 185,000 deserving kids with scholarship since its founding. By the way, we called the teachers union and the CDC and invited both of them to appear. We hope to hear from them eventually. Darla, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
K through 12 schools got a huge influx of money, of federal funds from these 3 COVID bills, 2 before President Biden and 1 by President Biden. The total comes to $193 billion. A lot of that goes to the teachers union. Do you think somebody called Randi on Thursday and kind of reminded her about how much money they got in these packages?
I don't know if there was a call made or not, but I know when I look at reopening in the fall, I guess my response to that is I'll believe it when I see it. Clearly, they've been talking about reopening schools for a long time this year. It hasn't happened. Only 30% of elementary and middle school kids are actually going to live instruction. It hasn't happened so far, so I'm not real confident it's going to happen in the future. I'm glad that she's saying it now, but it's a little like, lifting the mask mandate when states have already lifted it, or many of them didn't have it in the first place. It's all just words, and it's like saying the border's closed when people are pouring in over the border. It doesn't have a lot of effect on what's actually happening real time.
Which is why so many kids, so many parents, I should say, have moved their kids from public schools to private schools if they can afford it. If they can't, of course, they look to your organization for a scholarship, or they try something else, charter schools that are non-unionized. But it's clear that the ATF and other teachers unions are trying to revive their reputation after so many parents have been furious at their insistence on keeping schools closed for so long, despite all the money coming in to try to keep them safe. Will this revive their reputation?
I think like I've said before, I think the curtain's been pulled back. There's a fundamental problem here, and that's that the incentives and the power are not aligned properly. And whether it's the pandemic and the schools didn't open, whether it's educational attainment, whatever it is, until you actually give freedom to the parents to choose a school for their children, until you fund children and not systems, we're going to keep having these kinds of problems. The pandemic just showed what the problem was. And you can see in 30-some states across the country, there's been a lot of activity around school choice, parental freedom, letting parents have the power. Imagine what would have happened last September if a parent in a public school in New York City, for example, said, you know what, my school's not opening, I want to go to a different school. And the money would have followed the child, because in New York City, the private schools and the parochial schools, they've been open since September. So the fact that they're now saying that you can open the schools, well, there were already proof points this entire time to show it, you could do it and you could do it safely. And nobody wants teachers to be treated unfairly, and nobody wants them to risk their lives teaching kids, certainly not. But we also don't want the education of millions of children to be held hostage to a power structure that does nothing to further their interests.
Bingo, bingo. There's also, and we have very limited time, but the question about what goes into the teaching and things like critical race theory and the 1619 Project, which essentially says the country was built all around slavery, and that motivated it more than any interest in freedom, et cetera. Randi Weingarten, for one, supports 1619. She said the country has to see its history in all of its manifestations, and that history cannot be whitewashed. The 1619 Project forces those who do not want to see. Well, in fact, a lot of historians have seen 1619 Project, both conservatives and liberals, and say that it's dead wrong in many of its assumptions. So how do parents deal with that the teachers union backs these historically challenged plans?
Well, right now, if you're a poor parent who's stuck in a school by your zip code, you don't have anywhere else to go. People with other resources and abilities can pull their kids out. And, our schools are not supposed to indoctrinate kids. They're supposed to teach you how to think and how to think for yourself. And so if I were a parent looking at it, and also schools should be able to align with the parents' beliefs and values. Right now, Like I said, if you have resources, if you can move to a different school district, if you can put your kid in a private school, you have choices. You know who really gets hurt are the kids that are poor,
right.
Kids of color, stuck in bad schools. It's exactly opposite of what they should be trying to do, given everything else they're talking about.
Which is why we need the Children's Scholarship Fund, and you were looking at the president of that fund, Darla Romfo. Good to see you, Darla. Thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.